Found out. My husband's business trips were vacations with another woman. I always believed trust was the cornerstone of any relationship. When I married my husband, Jason, 10 years ago, I thought we had that trust down pat. He was my best friend, my partner in everything, and we shared a bond I believed was unshakable. But the events of the past few months shattered all that. It's funny how life can throw a curveball when you least expect it. Jason had been going on frequent business trips for the past 2 years. At first, it was occasional, maybe a trip every few months, and then it became more frequent. Work had picked up, he'd said, and his company needed him to close some critical deals. It made sense. His job was demanding, and with the promotions he'd been getting, I didn't think twice about it. Why would I? He'd never given me a reason to doubt him. He'd always been diligent about keeping me in the loop during his trips. Calls before bedtime, a message here and there during meetings, and pictures of conference rooms and meals. But slowly, those calls became less frequent. He'd claimed to be too busy, exhausted, or tied up with late-night meetings. I still didn't suspect anything. After all, work could be stressful, and maybe I was just overanalyzing things. But then subtle changes in Jason's behavior began to emerge. He'd always been a loving husband, never hesitated to show affection, but lately it felt distant. He was distracted, his phone always glued to his hand or face down on the table. I brushed it off as work stress until one night when I noticed something strange. Jason had fallen asleep with his phone on the bed. I wasn't one to snoop, but for some reason, that night I couldn't help myself. Maybe it was intuition, maybe it was just paranoia, but I picked up the phone. As I swiped, a notification popped up, a message from someone named Brianna. My heart raced, but I convinced myself it was work-related. Still, I clicked on it. The texts were casual at first, then flirtatious. Inside jokes, nicknames, and plans that weren't for meetings or dinners with clients. Instead, they were discussions about beach walks, sunsets, and romantic dinners. I felt a lump in my throat as I scrolled further. It was all too clear now. This wasn't a work colleague or a client, this was someone much more personal. I froze, unable to believe what I was reading. I wanted to wake Jason up right then and there and confront him, but instead I slipped the phone back, heart pounding, and went to the bathroom. I stared at my reflection in the mirror, trying to process what I had just discovered. My husband, the man I trusted more than anyone in the world, was hiding something from me. I didn't sleep that night. My mind raced with 1,000 questions. Who was she? How long had this been going on? What did he think he was doing? The next day, Jason left for another business trip, leaving me with nothing but my suspicions and a knot in my stomach. I didn't say a word to him, but I started paying closer attention. Over the next few weeks, I kept an eye on Jason's behavior, his trips, and his communication patterns. I became a detective in my own marriage, piecing together the clues he didn't even realize he was leaving. I looked at his credit card bills, something I'd never done before, and saw charges that didn't add up. Expensive dinners in cities he hadn't mentioned, hotel stays at resorts that were far from business districts. And then, one evening while he was away, I did the thing I never thought I'd do. I logged into his email. I know it sounds terrible, but I needed to know. I needed to understand what was going on behind my back. What I found wasn't just emails about work. There were confirmations for romantic getaways, flights, and hotels for two. Places we'd never been together, places I'd only ever dreamed of visiting with him. And always, Brianna was there. The vacations Jason had told me were for work conferences were, in reality, romantic retreats with her. I remember sitting there, staring at the screen, feeling like my world was crumbling around me. This was the man I'd spent over a decade with, shared my life with, built a future with. I'd been completely in the dark while he was off living a double life. The next few days were a blur. I tried to keep my emotions in check, but the rage and hurt boiled under the surface. I couldn't focus on anything. Every time I looked at him, I felt sick to my stomach, but I still couldn't bring myself to confront him. Not yet. Instead, I made a plan. I decided to take time off work and follow him on his next business trip. I needed to see it for myself. I booked a flight to the same city and stayed at a hotel nearby, knowing that I'd find him with her. And I did. I'll never forget that moment. I saw them, hand in hand, walking along the beach like a happy couple on vacation. They were laughing, completely unaware of the storm brewing just a few feet away. I followed them discreetly for a while, watching as they enjoyed their romantic getaway. The lies, the betrayal, it all became painfully real in that moment. I went back to my hotel room and cried. It felt like the weight of the world was pressing down on me. I didn't want to believe this was my reality, but there it was, right in front of me. My husband had been lying to me for years, creating an alternate life with another woman, while pretending to be the devoted husband at home. When I returned home, Jason acted like everything was normal. He greeted me with a kiss and asked how my weekend was, completely oblivious to the fact that I knew everything. I wanted to scream at him, demand answers, but I held it together. Instead, I started preparing for the confrontation I knew was inevitable. The following week, after he came back from yet another business trip, I finally confronted him. I sat him down and asked him about Brianna. The look on his face was one I'll never forget. His color drained, and for a moment I could see the panic in his eyes. He tried to deny it, of course, but I didn't give him a chance to lie. I told him everything I knew, the emails, the texts, the vacations. I laid it all out on the table. At first he was defensive, then apologetic. He begged for my forgiveness, swore it was a mistake, that he loved me and only me. But the damage was done. The trust that had once been the foundation of our marriage was gone, shattered beyond repair. I wish I could say that we worked it out, that we went to counseling and somehow rebuilt what was lost, but that would be a lie. I couldn't move past the betrayal. Every time I looked at him, all I could think about were the lies, the deceit, and the other woman. I had given him my heart, and he had crushed it. We're in the process of separating now. It's been one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, but I know it's the right decision. I deserve better than someone who lies to me, who takes advantage of my trust, and who disrespects our marriage vows. Looking back, I still can't believe how blind I was. I thought I knew him so well, but it turns out I only knew the version of him he wanted me to see. The hardest part of all this is the realization that the person you loved, the person you thought was your forever, can betray you in the worst way possible. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know this. I won't let this define me. I won't let his betrayal break me. I'm stronger than that, and I'll move on. One day I'll find someone who values honesty, who respects me, and who will love me without deception. And until then, I'll heal. Slowly but surely, I'll heal.